Anyone wishing to write a non-boring family history has to deal with the daunting task of writing a first draft. Many people in my writing workshops will admit that they never write anything because they don't know what to write, and they don't want to write something awful. Guess what? Everyone must write a first draft, no matter the chosen genre of stories and reports. And yet, we often cannot write our family histories because we're too busy comparing our rough draft to someone else's final version. Please stop! You have no idea how many revisions that finished work endured before coming before your eyes. Well, unless you're an editor by trade. Together, let's reframe our understanding of your first attempt at writing a story. Of course, it will be terrible because that's the way it's designed to be. But no one should ever publish the first draft. In fact, Ernest Hemingway apparently isn't a fan of rough drafts when he said, "The draft of anything is full of, you know what." I won't argue with the man who wrote The Old Man and the Sea, A Farewell to Arms, and For Whom the Bell Tolls. Therefore, if he believed first drafts are awful, cut yourself some slack and write the garbage version of your family story today. Simply stated, the goal of the first draft is to finish it. The goal isn't for the story to be grammar error free. The goal isn't for it to be published to sell for millions of dollars and for millions of copies. Heck, the goal isn't for your family to love the story. Yet, the goal of your first draft is simply to finish it. While I like to keep things simple, experts in writings have other thoughts on the goal of the first draft. Professor Mark Davis from St. Lawrence University wrote, "The purpose of the first draft is to get one's ideas on papers and to try out a plan of organization for those ideas." Additionally, he suggests the following. We include more, not less. We should experiment in our first draft by trying ideas to see what works. This draft could be for sharing with others to obtain feedback before we publish something. Knowing the goal of the first draft will help you finish it sooner rather than later. What doesn't constitute a genealogy book's rough draft? If your book looks like this or this, you have not written a rough draft. While you may want to share the big book with generation after generation of family members and how they related, those books serve their purpose. Shareable online genealogy trees replace the need for such books. As such, we need to stop trying to print out a book form of our genealogy databases. Few people enjoy a book of charts and notes. Instead, write a family story that ties the charts, notes, and details together. Here's an example from the published genealogy entitled Descendants of Reinhold and Matthew Marvin of Hartford, Connecticut. You've seen this book in other videos. Here's another example from my Geisler family ancestor books that's currently in progress. If you find errors, I'm okay with that because it's a rough draft, even though it's typed and I've begun inserting pictures. In this video, I even show you how to mark up first drafts, including inserting notations that you're lacking source citations. Now, I will not abandon you with the knowledge that your draft will be awful without giving you some pointers on making them less terrible. The sooner you write your first draft, the better off you will be. Follow these steps and you'll have the draft completed in next to no time. The first step involves picking an ancestor. Your book may focus on one ancestor or multiple relatives. Let me advise you to begin small if this is the first time you've written something. Only bite off what you can chew. Therefore, either focus on one person or a small family. Additionally, writing proceeds more quickly when you know the person you're writing about. Therefore, pick a close relative you've met or interacted with firsthand rather than through documents. Once you've written about a small family or someone you knew well, you can tackle the person you know only through records. Experience and practice give you the skills you need to write that story well. Step 2 involves gathering facts. As genealogists, our pre-writing process is easier than for fictional or academic writers. We don't need to take notes on random sources and pull them all together, because our source material should reside in a database, online tree, or research files. Therefore, make sure you have sufficient facts to start a story. Notice I didn't say all the possible detail. Sufficient facts often include researching the genealogy basic records, vital records, census records, city directories, burial records, photos, family stories and memories, and perhaps probates, wills, land, passenger lists, yearbooks, tax records, and newspapers. That's not an exhaustive list like the one I offer for free on our genealogy research page under the title Genealogy Brick Wall Busting Guide, but it is a start. With all these facts gathered, your next step is to create an outline. For genealogists, our outline is the timeline of our ancestors' life story. For the most part, if you're using genealogy software, the program creates a timeline as you add new date-based details to a person's profile. However, you could also create a timeline on paper or a spreadsheet. In your first draft, include events in your primary ancestor's life, their close family, meaning father, mother, sisters, spouses, children, and so forth. And then add a few significant historical events. If you focus on the family unit with a central ancestor and include historical events, your outline will lead you to a more well-rounded story. That story will be more engaging for your audience. With your genealogy source materials gathered and your timeline, all that is left is turning those resources into paragraphs. Simply extract all the details from the documents, then convert the extracted details into sentences that clearly convey what the data means, and connect the sentences with transitional words or contextual details so that each fact makes sense. Does that sound familiar? If you haven't watched a video about the easiest way to write a family history, it will be linked in the description box. Here's an example. Take the following from the 1910 census and turn it into something like this. In 1910, Caleb Crowley, age 56, lived in the 2nd Ward of Butte, Silver Bowl, Montana, on 209 Quartz. He was married to Margaret and had the following children. He worked in a copper mine as a timekeeper and had a mortgage on his home. His parents are originally from English-speaking Canada. Wow, that's a real page turner. Just kidding. That's precisely the point. All the first draft accomplishes is converting source material into sentences and sentences into paragraphs. We will have a completed first draft if we process all the documents about Caleb's life in this fashion. Remember, the goal of the first draft is to finish it. Therefore, please avoid the following pitfalls that make it impossible to complete that first draft. You may find that you do not have a source for a fact in your database as you write, or you may discover that you don't have a fact that you'd like to have. Do not stop writing to research more details. Instead, save that for when you complete your first draft and start revising it. Inner critics or inner editors halt the progress of authors writing their first draft. So send your critic on vacation or a timeout until after you finish your rough draft. It's supposed to be rough. You can invite your inner critic and editor to return after you finish your draft. They have an important job to do, but first, you must have an initial starting point. Claire Bradshaw suggests that finding your voice and developing a unique writing style are among the trickiest things you'll do as an author. For this reason, don't focus on them during your first draft at all. Whether you should write with formal or casual language, first person or third, or prose or poetic verbiage. Those are not decisions for the first draft. These stylistic decisions should come after you process the details of an ancestor's life and select your audience. Then, knowing your audience helps you revise your draft for them. However, you cannot know which audience would benefit from your story until after you write about your ancestors. Make a commitment to write a bad first draft. Have you changed your mind about writing the first draft yet? Are you ready to get started writing today? Awesome. Let me leave you with 2 more tips for quickly writing your story. Set a deadline for completing the rough draft. Ideally, the deadline will have a short timeline, such as a week or a month. Then set aside time to work toward your deadline. Just because you have a timeline for your ancestor's life doesn't mean you have to write in chronological order. Instead, the timeline serves as your checklist and your organizational structure. But if you want to write about your ancestor's death and probate records first, when they married second, and their military service before writing about their birth, go for it. Just arrange the stories in your draft in a timeline order, but jump to the sections you want to work on next. Now that you have the right mindset and know how to write your draft, I expect to hear from you soon that you have a rough draft ready for revisions, and you'll tell me all about that in the comments section. Thanks for watching On Your Way Out. Be sure to like this video, leave a comment, and share it with others. And then head on over to this video, which will take you to the process of revising those rough drafts. Thanks for walking.